After watching 222 episodes of this show and running headfirst into 12 and a half walls stopping me from completing my goal, I have finally discovered the answer to the oldest question MOP has to offer: just how old are the main 6 in My Little Pony? And to get to this conclusion, I kid you not, I had to solve multiple plot holes in this show that caused me to completely recontextualize our entire understanding of how time even works in Equestria. Because despite this question having literally zero impact on our day-to-day existence, for some weird reason, people want to know the ages of these candy-colored, friendship-fueled chaos nuggets. Last video, we established that the time that has passed in the show is 9 years. The show starts off with the Summer Sun Celebration, meaning that every time summer rolls around, so does 1 year. And the final season of the show ends shortly after the Summer Sun Celebration. And by counting the seasons between those two events, the in-world time for the show is 9 years. Now, at first glance, it might seem like pretty useless information, but it's important to figure this out before anything else, because we actually need to take this timeline we've created and cross-reference it with another timeline that actually gives us a pretty good estimate as to what the ages of the ponies are. And if you're just sitting there incredibly confused right now by what I mean exactly when I say another timeline, and you haven't actually seen the show, allow me to introduce you to a little spin-off series called Equestria Girls. Yup! They made a show about a purple pony princess going through a magical portal into a human world and becoming a purple human, going to high school with a bunch of human versions of her friends who live in this parallel dimension. Yep, this is a real thing that Hasbro made. It got some real mixed responses when it first released, let me tell ya. But regardless of how you feel about the show, this is the one area of this entire franchise that actually gives us a very specific range as to how old the characters could possibly be. If we can figure out exactly how old the characters are here, we can then cross-reference the human world's timeline with Equestria's to figure out their ages in the Ponyverse. No! Okay, so I suppose I should address the elephant in the room. I absolutely know for a fact that citing this show as a source is going to spark a lot of lore debates in the comments. There are two big debates about the lore of Equestria Girls that I need to focus on. The first one is whether or not this show is even canon to begin with, and the other is that the human Twilight is not the same age as Pony Twilight, and that she is de-aged upon crossing into the human world. Now, to start off with the first one, I fully believe that this show is in fact canon, and the reason why is because we learn in Equestria Girls that Star Swirl banished the sirens to the human world. Then we later see a flashback of this event in an episode from Friendship is Magic. On top of that, we even see Sunset Shimmer, an Equestria Girls character, make an appearance in Season 9. This, to me, appears to be the writers sending a pretty clear message to us that Equestria Girls is considered canon, and I see no evidence to suggest otherwise. So that's what we're going with for this video. As for the idea that the characters in the human world are not the same age as the characters in the pony world, and when they go through the portal they are de-aged, I don't completely buy into this idea. Like, you have to give a solid explanation as to why it would de-age them of all things. What purpose does that serve? By how many years? Are the CMC de-aged too? What exactly happens if a 2-year-old goes through the portal? Do they cease to exist? I have heard a lot of people claim this, but I have yet to hear any form of solid evidence to support this claim. The only semi-decent argument people give for them being younger in the human world is that the characters are living on their own in Equestria, and if they were the age of, say, high schoolers, they would still be living with their parents. I personally have always just figured that the ponies just take on more responsibility at a younger age in Equestria, especially since given that in Season 1, the characters really do often act closer to around the age of 13-year-olds. But by the end of the series, they carry themselves much more like young adults. However, I have recently realized that neither of these ideas are correct, and it all started because of an inconsistency I noticed in the timeline when looking at Equestria Girls that led me to a massive plot hole that nearly cost me to abandon this theory altogether. But it turned out not only to be the key to this theory, but led to a second theory to fill a plot hole that has been around ever since Season 2. So to figure out the ages of the Equestria Girls characters, all we need to do is figure out how long they are in high school for, since people typically graduate at age 18 and high school only lasts for 4 years. Then we just need to figure out what year of high school they're in, then cross-reference that information with the pony timeline to figure out their ages. And to figure out how many years they're in high school for, we can do the same thing that we did for FIM and count the seasons. And trust me, this is far harder than you could ever imagine. Why is it so hard, you ask? Because this series decided to throw a curveball at me that makes no freaking sense. The first Equestria Girls takes place in the fall, as evidenced by the fact that the entire plot hinges on the fall formal. Easy enough. After this comes Rainbow Rocks, which takes place immediately after the first movie, as we see in the opening scene with the giant friendship laser. So essentially, no time has passed. The third installment in the Equestria Girls series is the Friendship Games, which takes place during the events of the Season 5 finale. We learned this from the final scene where Twilight steps through the portal and starts talking about how she was caught in a time loop. Obviously, a reference to her conflict with Starlight. What's interesting is that because this movie takes place at the end of Season 5, and the first movie took place right before Season 4, there is actually a 3-year gap between these two movies, meaning we shouldn't expect to see them stay in school for any longer than 1 more year. The next special in the timeline is The Legend of Everfree. I wonder, is there anything here that tells us just how much time has passed?
The past year has all been a bit too much for my tastes.
The what?
The past year.
Surely you aren't referring to the past several movies, right?
We fought 3 evil sirens, 1 ridiculously competitive rival school, and 2 demon friends.
Wait just a minute! I need to check the timeline real quick. Yep, here we go. Yep. Yeah, here we go. I just double-checked the timeline, and like I said earlier, if we line up Equestria's timeline with the human world's, it indicates that between Twilight's coronation, which is right before the Equestria Girls movie, and the ending of Season 5, it's been a whole 3 years! Not 1 year, as Rarity seems to be suggesting here. This makes absolutely 0 sense! Like, when I realized this, I started desperately trying to find an explanation. I thought, maybe time moved faster in Equestria, kinda like the world of Narnia. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Otherwise, all the ponies would be aging faster, and therefore giving birth faster, growing older faster, and dying faster. Meaning there wouldn't be any of the main 6 characters in the human world, because Equestria's universe would be countless generations ahead of theirs. And so I thought, maybe Rarity is just plain wrong? Well, none of the other characters correct her, so I highly doubt that. Plus, this would be a pretty weird and random thing to get wrong. Nope. There genuinely doesn't seem to be any real explanation here. And honestly, this one kinda broke me. Like, it legitimately caused me to shelve this theory for a real long time before picking it back up. I just couldn't explain what the heck was happening here without delving into headcanon territory, which I don't like doing. I want to make sure that whatever theories I come up with, I have solid evidence for, and not just baseless guesses. At that point, it's no longer a theory, it's literally just a glorified fan fiction. But recently, I started work on this theory again. For about the 5th time, actually, and realized that this supposed plot hole is not in fact a problem, but is actually the solution to explain another major plot hole that this series has had ever since Season 2. In the episode Winter Wrap-Up, we learned that the citizens of Ponyville have been wrapping up winter manually for centuries.
For hundreds of years, they've never used magic to clean up winter.
But in the episode Family Appreciation Day, we are told that Granny Smith was around for the founding of Equestria, making her hundreds of years old. And upon realizing this, suddenly everything began to fall into place. And what I discovered changes everything. This whole time, we have been assuming that pony aging must be the same as human aging. It only makes sense, right? For every pony that exists, they have a human counterpart. And when their counterpart is born or dies, their doppelganger must also die. The issue with Granny Smith being 300 is that her human counterpart must also be 300. But this is all only somewhat true. Despite what I said earlier, Equestria is moving at a different speed than the human world. It has to be, specifically 3 times the speed, as indicated by Rarity in The Legend of Everfree. There's no other way to interpret this scene. If this wasn't the case, then Granny Smith in the human world would be approximately 300 years old. But if we stop assuming the ponies age the same way the humans do and acknowledge the fact that Equestria moves 3 times faster than the human world, suddenly it all makes sense. Ponies live longer than humans, 3 times as long to be exact. This explains how Granny Smith was around for the founding of Ponyville. She is approximately 300 years old, while her human counterpart is closer to 100. And if she's not 300, she is likely at least 250 given how long Ponyville has been around for, how old she appears, and the fact that she was already an older filly during Ponyville's founding, which, if we assume is 3 times the age of your average teenager, puts her at around 43 years old in this flashback. And I already know you're still skeptical of this claim, but don't worry, there is more evidence to back this up. The Cutie Mark Crusaders. If MLP spans 9 years, then why do the CMC not appear to age? They stay the same size throughout the whole show and never grow to the older stages of development. But if they age at 1/3 the pace as humans, suddenly it makes sense why they don't appear any older. 9 years to them is more like 3 years to us. And there's even more evidence because this also explains why characters such as the Cake Twins have no indication of getting older other than the fact that later on in the show, they are no longer wearing diapers. Equestria moving at 3 times the speed and the ponies living 3 times as long actually makes sense. And not only does it make sense, but it's the only thing that makes sense. Woo! You guys get 2 theories for the price of 1. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, we were figuring out how many years passed at Equestria Girls. Sorry, I got very sidetracked there. The Legend of Everfree occurs shortly after the previous film, as shown by Twilight's relationships with the other characters, and the fact that all Equestria Girls movies happen within 1 year. We also have this short series that was released with 3 22-minute episodes, which take place during the summer, according to Pinkie Pie, immediately followed by the summertime shorts.
Major bummer in the summer!
We then transition into Forgotten Friendship, where we note it is either spring or fall since the characters are in school, indicating that 1 year has passed. Next is Roller Coaster of Friendship, which takes place in the summer according to Applejack.
Rarity and I applied for summer jobs at the new theme park.
We then get Spring Breakdown, which indicates that a 2nd year has passed. Next is Sunset's Backstage Pass, which takes place during the Sprummer. And then we get Holidays Unwrapped, which is a series of shorts taking place during the winter, meaning that fall has passed once again, indicating that 3 years have gone by. We also have a bunch of shorts, songs, and choose your own adventure stories that may or may not be canon because of the different endings they have. Other than shorts that are tied to specific movies, it's not actually very clear as to when they take place on the timeline, and they honestly don't really matter that much or make a difference, so we can ignore them. So we know 3 years have passed, but there is a major issue with this theory that I'm sure so many of you are already telling me about in the comments. Going off these photos that we see in Principal Celestia's office, Sunset Shimmer was in high school long enough to be crowned Princess of the Fall Formal for 3 years in a row, with the first Equestria Girls movie marking her 4th year. This would mean that the characters have been in high school for 6 years, which doesn't add up because high school typically lasts 4 years. But what if I told you that this notion is completely false? These are not, in fact, pictures from the previous fall formals. Listen closely to what Fluttershy says in the first Equestria Girls movie.
Just ask the girl who ran against her for Princess of the Spring Fling.
The Spring Fling. These photos of Sunset are not from the fall formal, but rather, they are all from a different event for each season. One for winter, one for summer, and of course, one for the Spring Fling. Which means that Sunset has only spent 1 more year in high school, not 3. And we know that the rest of the main 6 did as well, since they were in the previous yearbook and were present for the Spring Fling. Meaning, all of the characters are in school for exactly 4 years. Haha! Yes! This is perfect! There is still one other thing to account for though, which is that in Friendship is Magic, the pony version of Fluttershy states that she is a year older than Pinkie Pie.
I'm a year older than you.
And while this may seem problematic at first, this is actually incredibly helpful. If Fluttershy is a year older than Pinkie Pie in Equestria, then that means her human counterpart is only 4 months older than human Pinkie, which explains why they are in the same grade despite their ages. And we know that in the first movie, all of them are 15 because this is the beginning of fall, aka the beginning of the school year. Now remember, it also takes place right before the first day of summer at the beginning of season 4 in Equestria. And since the series ends not long after the first day of summer, we can just take the ages of the humans, which are 15, multiply it by 3 to get 45, then add in the remaining 6 years between Equestria Girls and season 9 to get their ages. And since the first Equestria Girls movie comes right at the beginning of summer, and the series ends not long after the first day of summer, giving us a near perfect year marker, we know that most of these characters are 51 years old. For any of the characters to be older than 51, they would have to have their birthdays soon. So let's confirm whether or not they're 51. Pinkie Pie and Twilight's birthdays are in the spring, so not soon enough to be older than 51. Rainbow Dash's is early summer according to how many episodes come after Pinkie Pride that are also in the summer, meaning that Rainbow Dash is likely to be 52 years old. Rarity's birthday, however, never actually appears in FIM, but it does show up in an Equestria Girls short during the spring, which is so late into the school year that there is no way she can be older than 51 in the pony world. And finally, we have Applejack, whose birthday never actually shows up in the series at all. But given that she has to have her birthday in the first half of summer in order to be 52, there is only about a 12.5% chance that she is any older than 51. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to announce that the final calculation for the ages of the characters are Twilight Sparkle at 51 years old, Pinkie Pie at 51, Rarity 51, Applejack 51, with Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash at 52 years old. Cue music! Nope, can't play any more than that, or Hasbro will try and copyright claim this video. This project has been a long time coming, and I am so happy to finally have it completed. If you enjoyed it, please like the video. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I've covered everything and there aren't any crucial elements that I missed.
Hey, you said the timeline goes for 9 years, right?
Yeah?
So the Cake Twins are 8 then.
I suppose. What's your point?
Look, I'm just saying we've seen what a 5-year-old pony looks like in Sweetie Belle's flashback, and she sure as heck doesn't look like those two. How do you explain that?